It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Monday, August 7th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that's talking Flyers goaltending options.
Yeah.
Sam Ersson got a contract extension. We'll get into that as well as the other Flyers goaltending options, plus our Nemesis of the week, all on today's show.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at @rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. And we as a show are on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Locked On Flyers as well. You can subscribe or follow us for free over on YouTube. We're on the SiriusXM app. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, you'll get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we dig into the goaltending news and situation around the Flyers, just want to wrap up the World Junior Summer Showcase. And I think there's obviously two stories here for us, right? There's Cutter Gauthier doing what he had to do and showing that he is the veteran, quote unquote, of this junior squad and being a leader out there. And then Cole Knuble making a name for himself.
Yeah, those are two good storylines. I mean, there was never an issue whether, Gauthier would score or not score. He always scores. Whether he plays center or wing, that's fine. And Knuble is definitely becoming a useful player for that system and being able to play in the World Juniors. I definitely think he should make the team because I feel like he's, while he's one of those older players, he has some good intangibles and really did make a jump last year. So I think, it's a good sign for both. Knuble's still on the bubble. Gauthier is not on the bubble.
Right. So it was good that Gauthier played both center and wing in the tournament, got a feel for both positions. So they'll see, where they want to put him for World Juniors in December. And then with Knuble, he got those opportunities to play in all situations. He was on the PK, he was on the power play. And so it'll just be a matter of if there's space, right?
Right. Yeah. It'll be a matter of if there's space, who's injured, so those kinds of things come into play, and there'll be that little get together before the World Juniors. Maybe not a full camp because they just had the full camp, but enough to, figure out who the guys are and then start making the cuts. But I think Knuble can at least say he's probably going to be one of the later cuts.
Yeah, I would say so as well. There's one more big camp before the World Juniors squad is selected, and that'll take place in December.
Yeah, I was at last year's. Maybe I'll go to this year's. We'll see.
All right. We also had the Hlinka Cup happen, which is the U17 tournament. And that gives us a hint at maybe some of the prospects eligible for next year's draft. Canada won the gold medal in that tournament over Czechia. Team USA won over Finland for the bronze. It was the first time they'd gotten a medal since 2016. So that's really good for Team USA. Any draft eligible players stand out to you in this one, Russ?
Yeah, there's a bunch of guys, but because I saw more US than anything else right now because of my schedule, I'll talk about Trevor Connolly and Will Zellers. A good friend of the show, Adam Woden, told me about Will Zellers a year ago. He's now out in the Denver area, Adam. So he went to, I think one of the camps and really, reported back to me, hey, Zellers looks great. So he was on my radar instantly, and he's a goal scorer and he does look really, really good. And looks like he played a game last year for Green Bay. So he probably goes back to Green Bay. So it means I'll see him in the Fall Classic. So I'll definitely be keeping my eye on him. And Trevor Connolly was just fantastic. Best U.S. player. Really had a big year at Shattuck, or not Shattuck, Tri-City. Will Zellers was at Shattuck. He was at Tri-City. He was really, really good. Actually, and he scored a lot of points at Tri-City. He, I want to say he was about 50-something points. So really good on the power play, away from the power play, good skater. If he's on the power play, he could play both sides equally. and really could, do the give and go, set up his guys, also score goals. Really good hockey IQ. Everything is there for him. And, where Zellers is like a 5'9" guy, Connolly's a 6'1" guy. He had 47 points, 24 goals. So he really, a terrific complete player. So he's a guy that will start to get a lot of buzz and probably a little more than Zellers. And that's fine. I mean, but these are both really good prospects.
Yeah, so it's good early on just to have a couple of guys to maybe start paying a little bit more attention to as we go into this upcoming season in the USHL. Switching gears back to the Flyers, we learned over the weekend that Sam Ersson was signed to a 2-year contract extension, $1.45 million for each season. He's still under contract for one more year at the about $860K deal. So this means that the Flyers have him under contract for the next 3 years, but that salary bump won't kick in until next season. So I think that it kind of raised a lot of eyebrows when they announced that, simply because we already have, 3 other goaltenders under contract in the system. It does make Sam Ersson the goaltender with the longest tenured contract in the Flyer system right now. And I think that just raises a lot of questions, right?
It does. We all wonder what's going to happen with Carter Hart. So obviously we look at this and see the length of contract and say, we know that Ersson was a favorite of John Tortorella, but I'm a little worried just in the sense that as much as I liked him and said that, yes, a year or two ago, probably 2 years ago, that I felt he was ahead of Sandstrom, that still doesn't mean I think he could play, 45 games in an NHL season as like a 1B. I don't know if he could do that. I mean, it was a very small sample size last year. And yeah, he had those, like, I don't know, what was he, 5-0 for a little while or something, but that wore away a little too. I don't know. I mean, this is a situation where I now have to look at the Flyers goaltending and say, all right, until we start hearing more definites, there's a lot up in the air here.
Yeah, and I think the question why now is the biggest one, right? Where you already have him under contract for one more year. There is time to see how he's developing. There's time to see if you give him a better schedule in terms of games played and don't overuse him, to see what he's actually like. You can see what he's like over the course of a full NHL season if you decide he's your backup. We have time here. So, like, what's the hurry? I think is the biggest question.
Yeah, and I mean, I forget, what was the dollar amount? 2.9, something like that?
Yeah, so it's 1.45 per season.
Right, 1.45 per season. I mean, it's a lot for an unproven goalie, honestly. I mean, it's just, and so it's just, I look at it, and I know everybody says, Russ, don't worry about it. It's only 1.45. Yeah, okay. But it all counts against the cap, and you still have Cal Petersen, too, to kind of figure out what his role is, too. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know what's going to happen with it. Nobody knows, but right now I could say their goaltending, it's in a weird spot. It's almost in like a holding pattern.
Yeah, so we now have 4 goaltenders in the system under contract that all potentially are NHL level goaltenders. And, obviously you want 3 of those in the system, because you need to have a call-up available, right, in case of injury or whatnot. But having 4 at this level is a little bit unusual, I would say.
And Sandstrom's out of options.
Right.
So that's another fly in the ointment there.
Yeah, so, and all of this is kind of circling around the what is going to happen with Carter Hart right now that we do not have answers for. We do not have, detailed information about what could or may not be happening with the Hockey Canada report. We don't have timing on that or anything. And so we're all trying to read these tea leaves and say, what could they be indicating? But I think, we're at the point where we at least should do the academic exercise of, okay, what if the Flyers do not have Carter Hart for a portion or all of this upcoming season? And so we're going to get into that hypothetical coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by a product that I use literally every day, AG1. Maybe you're like me, you want to be healthy and eat well, but it's always easier said than done. That's no longer the case with AG1. AG1 is foundational nutrition supplement that delivers comprehensive nutrients to support whole body health. With one delicious scoop of AG1 in a glass of water each day, you're absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, and focus. It can be hard and expensive to keep track of multiple different supplements and vitamins, not to mention how hard it can be on your stomach. AG1 costs you less than $3 a day, and you're investing in your health, and it's cheaper than your cold brew habit. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go drinkag1.com/NHL network. That's drinkag1.com/NHL network. Check it out.
We will, of course, be having our Wednesday mailbag. So if you've got questions for us that you want us to answer, email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. You can tweet us at lockedonflyers, or you can comment over on YouTube. So Russ, digging into this goaltending situation, again, so much up in the air. So this is just a hypothetical, but if we do not have Carter Hart to start this season,
Or he gets traded.
Yeah, or they trade him. We are left with Cal Petersen, Sam Ersson, who we just signed to a contract extension, and Felix Sandstrom. Now, Felix Sandstrom has 1 year, this upcoming year, left on his deal. Cal Petersen, with that $5 million cap hit, has 2 years left on his deal. And now we have Ersson, whose contract will go 1 additional year beyond that. And I think, looking at this past season, Felix Sandstrom played 20 games at the NHL level, which, thinking back on it, I would not have guessed it was that high.
Yeah,
it was.
Yep.
And, as we saw later in the season, his goals against average at the NHL level was 3.72, which is not ideal. Again, totally understand who was playing in front of him.
Oh, yeah. Some of those games were just awful.
Just brutal. But I think we saw, as you mentioned earlier, John Tortorella kind of attached himself to Sam Ersson in a lot of ways. And so as things were changing, Ersson got more games toward the latter part of the season. And so I think that it's a real interesting dilemma with these three guys. If these are your options, do you even have a 1A, 1B, or is it just 2 ones that are even throughout the course of the season? And do you try and figure things out that way? And do you rotate all 3 of them over the course of the season and use 3 roster spots for a goaltender? There's so many options for the Flyers right now.
Yeah, I mean, they might have to use 3, which isn't ideal, only because my belief is, from what I've heard, is if you send Sandstrom down, he's got to pass through waivers and someone could pick him up. And that's going to happen every time he goes up and down. And if there's ever a goaltending injury this season at some point, someone's probably going to pluck him. So there's that. So then you wouldn't even have 3 goalies anymore, right? So me personally, my ideal situation is at that point, you would keep Ersson and Sandstrom up at the NHL level. You would send down Cal Petersen, who then you would save money on the cap on as well, rather than pay his salary and then worry about it another day. Go with those 2 guys, and they're 2 young guys, so you're probably going to be okay for this season. That would be my ideal plan in this scenario.
Yeah, I think that's probably your best option because of the waiver situation that you brought up. That I don't think anybody's picking up Cal Petersen on waivers, right?
Not at that salary.
And we talked about this last week that Nolan Meyer was re-signed by the Phantoms, so he's like your B goaltender for the Phantoms. And if you have Petersen and Meyer, I think that's really good. I just worry that putting the goaltending of the Philadelphia Flyers on the shoulders of Felix Sandstrom and Sam Ersson when objectively they are not going to be good defensively. I think it could cause some damage from a developmental perspective. It could create a situation where, the confidence levels go down and all of that. Now they could like break through that, either one of them, and have some real great moments and really show what they're made of. So there's opportunity in this scenario as well. But there's also this scenario where the two of them are just getting hammered and there's like really nothing that can be done. And it'll just be a rough year for both of them.
My feeling is, and what you're saying is true, the problem is that, let's say you use Petersen and he's just getting shelled. Like, to me,
do I care if Petersen's getting shelled?
You may not care, but will the players care for
That's
Petersen?
true.
The
That's
players
true.
are going to care more for the homegrown guys that they know and came up with and want to play harder for them. That's my feeling. And I kind of lean towards that rather than with Petersen. They're going to just be like, they brought him in anyhow. He's not really that good, or he has to prove himself again. These guys, these are our buddies. Like, do you really want to do this to them? I just think there'll be more accountability that way.
Yeah, I feel like this past year, there was something about being in the trenches of this past year that, there's a lot of change on this roster. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like the guys that will have been through this will just have something special.
Yes.
I think there's something to what you're saying along those lines. But I also think that the guys are going to want to have a goaltender they can depend on. And I wonder just how much camp is going to have an effect on all this.
I mean, but with the way this team is, there may not be a goaltender on earth that they can depend on. Even Carter Hart had some bad moments last year. So it's like, who are you going to depend on anyhow? Like, I don't know if there's anybody on that you could use in that scenario that makes things better.
I know, it's just so wild. So you have Felix Sandstrom with 20 NHL games, Sam Ersson with 12 NHL games, and Cal Petersen with 10 NHL games this past year. I mean, not even a complete season between all three of them.
It's wild, but this is, again, for a rebuilding team, not the worst thing. If you're a team that thinks that you're going to turn it around quickly, clearly this is a stumbling block for turning it around even in 2 years. Unless Sam Ersson's the next Patrick Waugh, which I don't think he is, but I don't know what he is either.
Yeah. So is there anything that you think Tortorella can do from a defensive standpoint that maybe they weren't doing last year to help support these goldtenders? Ersson and Sandstrom.
No, what they could do is just keep going with those 7D that you love, Rachel. I mean, that's yeah, I know how you love that, and they could do that, and I expect that we'll see some of that this year. So because they do have an extra guy on D this year, and so, or at least one, maybe two. So I think we're going to see that more often, and I think that's going to be what they're going to use to combat it. And we know that anytime they do that, it always affects the offense. But that's probably the way they're going to go.
It's not a bad thought. I mean, I don't know that I agree with it, but it's not a bad thought in terms of what they might do, right? From a prediction standpoint. But also, I think that we're going to see, again, like we did at the beginning of last season, which tapered off a little bit, but that block shot thing is going to come back with a fury. The Flyers defense is going to be just tasked with blocking as many shots as possible. It could get real ugly.
It could be. It could be a shooting gallery again some games, and there could be guys that, are really going to have to eat pucks. I'm expecting that. Mark Stahl is going to eat a lot of pucks this year.
Yeah, and, God bless him if he does, because I think it's going to be a big job. And so if he's willing to take one for the team and do that kind of work, I then will probably be a lot happier about having. I wouldn't
even take one block puck, and someone like Stahl is going to be like at 100 or something. More than that. Yeah,
I know. Yeah, I think that's going to be a huge part of it, and he's going to be dependent on and there's going to be somebody in all three, defensive pairings that's going to have to take the brunt of blocking more shots. And so I think, all of this has a cascading effect, right? So it's not just the goaltending here. It leads to changes in the defense. It could lead to injuries on the defensive side. I mean, the possibilities are endless. But again, we don't know what's going to happen yet. We'd like to think that Carter Hart will be in net for the Flyers at some point this season, whether it's game 1 or further down the road. He's been our franchise goaltender, and he has a promising career ahead of him, from a hockey standpoint. But we have to entertain the possibility that he will not be around. Given this,
I see it in the fan base. There's worry and uncertainty, and until that report comes out, nobody knows. So there's just, and then they see the contract and they're like, everybody said, yesterday. You could just go online and just see that. So yeah, we'll just wait and see.
All right. Well, that is the watchword, I guess. Wait and see. In the meantime, coming up next, we are going to announce our new poll question for this week that we've been doing all summer, plus name our Nemesis of the week. Russ, I've been having so much fun with these poll questions that we've been giving out, and y'all have come back with really strong responses and good comments. So we're going to keep it rolling over the course of the summer. Given all of what we just talked about, I thought one of the more interesting questions are in terms of the prospects that we have. Who is the biggest lock to make the Flyers opening night roster? And you have to pick one. I know there's some good options here, but you have to pick one. And our choices are Ronnie Attard, Tyson Forster, Bobby Brink, Egor Zamula, and Sam Ersson.
No Mason Millman, huh? Okay. It's a show joke for those who maybe jumped on.
I think, if you have one that's not on this list that you think is the biggest lock, feel free to put that in the comments. There'll be a separate post over on YouTube. So check it out over there and get your opinion in. As for our Nemesis of the week, last week we had a really fun conversation actually about Summer League, and if the NHL should have a summer league similar to what the NBA does. Instead of some of these smaller independent leagues out there, they would be like no checking and stuff like that to avoid injury. But I think it was a really fun conversation, and the more I think about it, the more I'm into it.
Yeah, my nemesis is just this dead time of the year for hockey. Like I was at a softball tournament playing on a media team, and so like Andrew Gross is on that team and Stefan Rosner. And so we're talking and we're like, maybe we'll break some RFA news today while we're here playing softball. And it's just like, that's how we're all thinking. Like, it's like, we're all, we all like baseball. We love to play baseball. We won the tournament, so we're all happy, but we talked about hockey for quite a bit. And, so we're just like, we're looking for that crumb, and that's how it is right now, this time of the year. So that's my nemesis. It's just, there's just no news. Carlson though, Erik Karlsson, if Elliot Friedman's right, maybe that trade will be there so we could talk about it next show. So maybe we'll get a little something.
Yeah, so having a summer league would absolutely create more news and more content.
It would. It would help the news cycle and the content cycle for sure.
Yeah, and I think it'd be fun for the fans. But my nemesis for this week is obviously tied to everything we're talking about. Is the timing of the Hockey Canada announcement and when the report is coming down. I think we've been sort of on pins and needles about it for several months now, I would say, and it just feels like this thing hanging over our heads, and it's hanging over the players' heads involved. It's a situation that a lot of teams are dealing with, and it's a situation that the survivor is dealing with as well. We cannot forget about that person and make sure that they're centered and their feelings are centered in all of this. But I just think that it's, waiting for that Band-Aid to get ripped off on so many fronts that until it happens, we're just all going to be on edge week to week to week. And that is why it's my nemesis this week.
Yeah, I'm with you. The only thing certain about all of this is the uncertainty of it all. And
Yep.
so it's like, it just, yeah, it makes everybody nervous. It's a bad place to be.
Yeah, and that's why, we just had to have this hypothetical conversation about the
Yeah.
Flyers goaltending because
Yeah.
there's so many different factors that could be at play here. And I think that it's an unfortunate situation for everybody involved. And I just, again, I hope that the survivor here has found some peace and, some justice along the way as well.
Yeah, I mean that's always the biggest hope. And then we do a show that analyzes the team, so then we have to see how it affects the team. And we can't do that show yet. We could only do the hypothetical what if show. So we did that. That's the best we could do.
Yeah, well, we will keep on top of that and talk about whatever we find out whenever we find that out, which is the most specific way we can talk about it at the moment. But that will do it for today's show. We'll be back on Wednesday, of course. We're going to have that mailbag I talked about, so get your questions in. You can tweet us at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail. Plus, you can comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great day, everyone.